New York City, 8.3 million people, 12,000 yellow cabs, 5 boroughs, 1 iconic skyline. Few places in the world hold such an undeniable presence in our collective imagination. From Wall Street to Broadway, from Central Park to the Statue of Liberty, New York is not just a city, it's a symbol. But what's even more incredible is that the New York we know today didn't always exist. The towering skyscrapers, bustling streets, and cultural landmarks, everything that makes New York unmistakable, are the result of centuries of evolution, transformation, and reinvention. How did a patch of dense forest inhabited by Native Americans grow into the financial, cultural, and political epicenter of the world? This is the story of New York City, its rise, its struggles, and its enduring spirit. Before the hustle and bustle, before the steel bridges and shimmering skylines, this land was something entirely different. For thousands of years, the area we now call New York was home to the Lenape people, a group of Algonquin-speaking Native Americans. They lived off the land, fishing in the rivers, cultivating crops, and coexisting with the natural world. To the Lenape, this land was known as Lenapehoking, a place of rich resources and deep spiritual significance. That harmony would change forever in 1524 when the Italian explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano arrived in New York Harbor under the French flag. Though Verrazzano left no permanent settlements, his voyage marked the beginning of European interest in this region. Almost a century later, in 1609, Henry Hudson, an Englishman working for the Dutch, sailed up the river that now bears his name. Hudson's exploration laid the groundwork for what would become a Dutch colonial outpost, a settlement that would eventually transform into the city we know today. In 1624, Dutch settlers arrived and established a colony called New Netherland. A year later, they built a fort at the southern tip of Manhattan. This settlement was named New Amsterdam, and from its earliest days, it was all about business. The Dutch West India Company saw the area's potential for trade, particularly in furs, which were highly valued in Europe. The Dutch were savvy merchants, but their relationship with the Lenape was far from harmonious. In 1626, Peter Minuit famously purchased Manhattan from the Lenape for goods worth about 60 guilders, roughly $1,000 in today's currency. But this was less of a fair trade and more of a cultural misunderstanding, as the Lenape didn't believe in land ownership in the same way Europeans did. New Amsterdam grew quickly, but it wasn't without its challenges. The settlement faced conflicts with local tribes, governance issues, and even attacks from rival powers. In 1664, the English seized control without firing a single shot. New Amsterdam was renamed New York in honor of the Duke of York, and thus began a new chapter in the city's history. Under English rule, New York began to thrive as a major port and trade hub. Immigrants from across Europe arrived, bringing diverse cultures and traditions that would shape the city's identity. However, this prosperity was built in part on exploitation. By the 1700s, New York had become one of the largest centers of slavery in the northern colonies, with enslaved people making up about 20% of the population. Despite this dark chapter, New York also became a hotbed of revolutionary activity. In the years leading up to the American Revolution, groups like the Sons of Liberty protested British taxation, and in 1765, the Stamp Act Congress convened in New York to challenge British authority. When war finally broke out, New York became a critical battleground. Although the British occupied the city for much of the war, the end of the conflict saw New York emerge as a beacon of freedom in the new United States. In the early 19th century, New York transformed from a regional port to a global powerhouse. The construction of the Erie Canal in 1825 was a game changer, connecting the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean and solidifying New York's position as America's premier port. Meanwhile, waves of immigrants, Irish fleeing the potato famine, Italians seeking opportunity, and Jewish refugees escaping persecution in Europe, arrived by the millions. By the mid-1800s, the city's population exploded, bringing new energy, but also new challenges. Overcrowded tenements, crime, and disease plagued neighborhoods like the Five Points. Yet, amidst the chaos, New York saw incredible innovation. Central Park, designed as a green haven for all citizens, opened in 18 1958, and cultural institutions like the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the American Museum of Natural History soon followed. The late 19th and early 20th centuries marked New York's ascent to global prominence. As immigrants passed through Ellis Island and gazed upon the Statue of Liberty, a gift from France that became a symbol of hope, New York grew upwards. The city pioneered the skyscraper, with icons like the Woolworth Building and the Empire State Building defining its skyline. The subway, which opened in 1904, connected boroughs and transformed daily life. Meanwhile, Wall Street cemented New York's role as the financial capital of the world. The city's spirit of ambition seemed unstoppable until the Great Depression of the 1930s brought it to its knees. New York's resilience was tested time and again in the 20th century. World War II revitalized the city's economy as its ports became critical to the Allied war effort. Post-war, New York emerged as a global cultural and financial capital, hosting the United Nations and leading movements in art, music, and fashion. But the city also faced challenges. The economic crises and crime waves of the 1970s painted a grim picture. Then, the attacks on September 11th, 2001 marked one of the darkest days in New York's history. Yet, through tragedy, the city found strength. The rebuilding of Lower Manhattan and the completion of One World Trade Center stand as testaments to its resilience. Today, New York City is a place like no other. From the bright lights of Times Square to the quiet streets of the West Village, from the diverse cultures of Queens to the innovation of Silicon Alley, New York is a city that never stops evolving. Its history is a story of ambition, resilience, and reinvention. From its Native American origins to its Dutch beginnings, from a colonial outpost to the sprawling metropolis we see today, New York City has always been a place of endless possibilities. No matter how many times it's been knocked down, it has risen again, stronger than before. That's what makes New York not just a city, but an idea. And that's why, for millions of people, it will always be the greatest city in the world.